just thank you everyone for being here. This is a really exciting day. I'm Rebecca Sayre. I am with Metropolis Real Estate in my real life, and or my most of my life. My other part of my real life, I should say, is I am also the membership coordinator here at the Northwest Eco Building Guild. I'm really honored to be part of this fabulous crew. I want to start our meeting today by acknowledging that we are on unceded Duwamish land. And we are great. I just got teared up when I almost said that. We're grateful for the caretakers of this land, past and present. So it's just great that we're here with such, we're going to have fabulous speakers this evening. We're talking about lighting for health and behavior. And we're going to have Eric Strandberg from the Lighting Design Lab and Nathanael Washam from Luminous Northwest. And it's going to be a very interesting conversation. I'd like to acknowledge that before we started, Eric was like, wait a minute, we need to turn the lighting down. So he set the mood before we even got started. So that's lighting in action. And we also have today, we have our first sponsor to join us at a live event also in 3 years, and that is Angela with Better Bricks. And I'm going to be really honest that our person who is going to give this talk just told me that she can't make it. So I'm going to quickly pull this up on my phone and just share with you all that Better Bricks is a commercial resource at the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance. Better Bricks helps Northwest building professionals get a competitive edge in the market. And whether you design, build, manage, or operate commercial buildings, Better Bricks partners with Northwest Utilities to provide the resources and tools you need to incorporate energy efficiency and its many benefits into your buildings and business practices. So thank you, Better Bricks, for being our sponsor this evening. It's really exciting. And also, just so everyone who's in-house knows that bathrooms are over there off to the right, just around the corner. And if anything happens, Steve wants me to let you all know that we do have emergency exits. I feel like a flight attendant. We have emergency exits on either side, and then you can go out left or right to head outside of the building. And I also just want to give a plug and a thank you. The Northwest Eco Building Guild, for those of you online, also those of you in person, we are a volunteer membership-driven organization. It is fabulous people of this community that make it what it is, that allows us to put on educational events, to provide resources like the green pages and other resources and connections for those who build, who design, who have an interest in sustainability. All of that is just has a home here at the Northwest Eco Building Guild, and we would love anyone interested in becoming a member or renewing their membership. I want to give a little shout out to Sage Saskill over here, who is in the middle of renewing his membership right now. So today, it's how it happens. So we just really appreciate that. And it is, y'all are the lifeblood of our community. And so with that, I want to pass it off to Steve Abercrombie, who is our host today at South Seattle Community College.
South Seattle College. And thanks everyone for coming out. I'm the faculty coordinator for the Sustainable Building Science Technology Program. 2,000 times said, and I got it right once. We are a Bachelor's of Applied Science program here, where we focus on operating commercial buildings more efficiently. This is part of a partnership between Northwest Eco Building Guild and the SBST program. We have about 15 students here online that are joining us hybrid, and we have a long working history with the Guild, going back a number of years with folks doing internships and participating in various Guild events. So we're really excited that we could bring this here in person and in hybrid. And this also is part of our class experience for our students. Couple of other things. I think we have a number of other folks that are joining us online, just online. I'm here monitoring the chat. If you have a question that needs clarification or anything else for our speakers, go ahead and feel free to add that into the chat, and I will either flag it to our speakers as we go, or we will hold it for the end. And then at the end, I think our speakers will take questions. At that point, I will distribute some mics around the room, and we'll be able to ask those into the mics so our online audience can hear them. And for anybody in chat, I will go ahead and either take your questions and ask them to the speakers, or if you'd like to voice in, go ahead and hit that raise hand button. And when we're in Q&A, I'll make sure that you get called. Otherwise, just so you know, if you are online, your voice comes out of the speakers about 3 times as loud as normal speaking volume in this room. So I will mute you if you have any background noise, but otherwise, if you do unmute yourself, you will know that everybody will immediately hear you and pay attention. So make sure you know exactly what you're going to say to the room. And I think with that,
I actually just have one quick request that I'd like to honor. And I was just asked, an old school guild practice was for those in the room to quickly go around and say who they are and what their work is. And my suggestion, we have a small but mighty audience here right now. So I think we could probably quick.
If we want to do that online, we're going to do that. We should be online too.
Well, I was just going to say, if we could do it verbally here real quick, and then people can put it in the chat online. And so that way we could do what we do at the Guild. We network and share resources. So why don't we start going around the room really quick? Do you want to say, Nathaniel?
I'm with Luminous Northwest, and I am a lighting designer.
Fabulous.
Current student at North Seattle College in the real estate, commercial real estate program. And I have about 32 years in the trade. So yeah, I'm here to soak something.
All right, fabulous. How about you? Wonderful. John?
I'm John Kawaguchi with Baldwin Associates. Bill Green here to start Verifier. I'm an FBSD graduate. I'm also the chair of this year's Green Home Tour. I'm sorry, but Green Home Tour is April 26th and 27th.
Todd?
Todd Staley. I'm two hats. I'm a team lead at U.S. Green Building Council. Started a small website, company, whatever, called Rooftop last year. We're partners with Gil.
Wonderful. John?
I'm, after a very long time being a general contractor, I'm now a green building consultant, and I've been involved in the guild for a good while.
Kira Sorensen, Sorensen Architects, mostly just do my own thing, mostly residential, but pretty much anything. Yeah.
Sage?
Hi folks, I'm Sage Saskiel. I've designed three-dimensional sculptures that people live in. And been a guild member since '99, I do believe. And my current claim to fame is I just got a new 4-legged friend that's a rescue crate 3 weeks ago. So,
Very exciting. Steve?
I'm Steve. I'm a recovery consultant. I teach here.
Eric?
Strandberg.
All right. And with that, oh, yeah, John, you already spoke. You missed it. And everybody else online, please share in the chat. And with that, we'll give you Eric Strandberg, as he said, Lighting Design Lab.
Thank you. Now let's see. Let's make sure do we have a clicker? Are we just doing
It's just the mouse.
page up? I'm doing page up or page down. That's not working. Oh, there we go. All right. Yeah, so not going to dwell on this, but I've been doing lighting for quite a while. And fun fact, I used to do film and video and theater lighting back in the 80s. And fun fact number 2 is the very first presentation I ever did when I was at the Lighting Design Lab was with the Eco Building Guild back in 1995. Yeah. So anyway, everybody learned something on that particular event. So blue light, I put this, I'll tell you, this presentation normally is about a 2-hour presentation. I've ruthlessly cut things out of it. But it got put together because around the time LEDs were coming online, they started out with streetlights, and everybody was concerned about the blue light from these newfangled LED streetlights. And so there was a desire to kind of get some information out there, make sure people are asking the right questions. Another reason I put this presentation together was I was working with a facility operator, and they said they were switching to human-centric lighting. And I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I wonder what that is. And it turns out all he was going to do was take out the fluorescent tubes and put in LED tubes. And the same fixtures, same controls, same everything, but it's suddenly human-centric. And I was like, okay, we all need to take a breath here and try to understand, what LED lighting is, what blue lighting is, what it isn't, some of that. So, and like I say, this is a longer presentation. Some of the transitions might be a little abrupt because I've cut out a lot. But let's just forge ahead. Little disclaimer, I'm neither a doctor nor a scientist, and a lot of what people talk about are benefits, health benefits potentially, or health problems associated with certain kinds of lighting. And, are we going to see things that are harmful in some way? I don't know. Do LEDs provide benefits that might be like daylight? Possibly. I think at the end of this, you may come away realizing this is a much more complex issue that we don't have answers for yet. So fundamentally, kind of need to think about, what are we doing with the light? What's the context of the light? Are we taking light where it didn't used to be before and putting it in some sort of deep interior space? And that's one kind of conversation. The other conversation is, are we making light after dark? And what's happening then? And that's, like I say, there's sort of two different paths that we would go on. So over the millennia, obviously, I'm sure this group is well aware, daylight has been our primary light source. I mean, this is, fundamental to our DNA, really. And so this electric lighting is really a new thing. That you could probably go 4, maybe 5 generations that we've had a meaningful amount of, we'll call it non-natural light inside after dark. And so it's, so we're still figuring it out. One of the things when you look at daylight is we notice that there's a lot of blue associated with daylight. One thing I love to see is, like, you look at Mount Rainier on a sunny day and you see all that white snow. But if you look in the shadows aren't black, they're blue. So that's kind of cool. That's one of the reasons moonlight is so creepy, because the shadows are just black, and we're not really used to. It's just kind of, we know it's nighttime. We shouldn't be outside in that kind of condition, anyway. But blue light. So I think we can probably say that this is not daylight. I mean, although there is a school of thought, which some people say a photon's a photon, right? I mean, so it doesn't matter where it comes from necessarily. And so that, I'm just saying, that's out there. And if it's a blue photon or a blue, then maybe there is something to it. What is blue light? Blue light is just a spectrum, piece of the spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum that's visible. And so, is there anything special about that wavelength? And I think at some point we have to kind of, and maybe I'll bring this up later, but it takes a certain context of, you know, you could take a cup of coffee and drink that and have a certain reaction, or you could take a no-dose capsule, it's, you know, just the caffeine. And I think we could realize it's probably not going to be the same. There's all these other things involved in that cup of coffee that you're not going to get just from 100 milligrams of caffeine. Although, again, that's up for debate. You know, what is real, right? So we have people sitting around a fire at night. We've been doing that for hundreds of thousands of years, probably, in some way or shape. We can take that experience and bring it inside, and it's, you know, still partly there. It's somewhat removed from the essential nature that it was, but it's providing a function. You know, I mean, there's a point at which, you know, maybe if we had a little incense burning, and you know, and some crackling sounds and a fan blowing, maybe we would get something that resembles something like that other experience. But I think we could realize there's a point at which we're removing fundamental pieces of that experience, and it's not the same. And, you know, so to have a connection with the outdoors and with the, you know, we don't all have to be Basque sheep herders. You know, ask somebody who delivers mail what the weather was like yesterday and what's gonna be like tomorrow, and they can probably tell you. Ask someone framing houses, same thing. You know, so we got an interior environment. We have a big skylight. I bet you anything the desks that people want are near that skylight. You know, that just makes sense. We can start, you know, adding light, trying to create something that feels like daylight, but I'm not sure we're necessarily there. One of the things that we find in modern work environments, you know, newer buildings, you look at old buildings built, you know, turn of the last century, and they had, you know, very shallow floor plates because people needed to be by windows so they could get light. They had incandescent light, but it was pretty weak. So it was really daylight. And so the floor plate was shallow, but with the advent of modern lighting, you can get these floor plates that are almost, you know, half a block deep. So we have, you know, 40-foot candles, 350 kelvins. I'll just tell you what these are later. I'm sure most of you know, but you know, 72 degrees all day long. It's unchanging. It's almost like sensory deprivation. And it doesn't have to be just an office environment. All kinds of industrial spaces. Here's a classroom. 6th graders. So it's not like you're going to a lecture hall for a lecture for a 40-minute, 50-minute lecture, and then you're off to another classroom, a lab where there's windows. They're in there all day. If you're working in that mall, it's like being in twilight all day long. You know, there's maybe 20, 25-foot candles. Very, it's enough to, you know, feel like it's lit. You can see things and displays are lit, but it's not a lot of light. So when we go look back at this picture, we see a lot of blue, but we also see something else. We see change. We see different intensity. The light changes direction daily. It changes direction seasonally. It changes duration, and then the timing. So those are all things, you know. So quality indoor lighting, I think, should include daylight. Of course, these days we need to function after daylight, to like right now. So I'm not, you know, unaware of that. We need the appropriate quantity of light for a given application. Contrast, we need to control. Color qualities, we'll talk about in a second. Varied control and sustainability. So just to get a couple of terms straight. So a light source, or in the industry we call them lamps, gives off lumens. And a lot of people are like, how many foot candles will I get? How much light do I need? How many foot candles? They fixate on foot candles. So You know, right, so, and the lumen starts with lumens, let's say, light strikes a surface, and we can measure that. We can say that's X number of foot candles, but we don't actually see that. What we see is reflected light, and that would be luminance. Archaic term up there is foot Lamberts. You might see that in some old documents. If you're seeing that in an older document, you're reading the wrong document probably. But if we change the context, it's the same amount of light, but it's a very different visual task. So just measuring how much light is striking a surface won't really tell us everything we need to know. The color of the light, that's part of what we're talking about today. You know, it's especially easy to see when we compare one to the next. Our eyes have a sort of natural white balance to them, so we're not going to necessarily see that starkly unless we're comparing two things. You know, in the natural world or whatever, we know flames are generally very warm. Daylight, sunlight are very blue, as we know. Some of the older light sources, LEDs can be pretty much anything. And just so we know, when we talk about these different colors, we're not talking about saturated. These are all variations on white light. It's like when you go to the paint store and you want white paint, there's all kinds of white paint. So these aren't saturated colors. They're just warmer and cooler variations on white. So one of the things that we've found is with higher Kelvin temperatures, maybe I didn't mention that. Let's see. Yeah, we use the Kelvin scale. So kelvins, so we'd say this 3,500 degrees, 6,500 degrees, 2,700, etc. So one thing that people noticed was under higher kelvins, you have better visual acuity. I use that word better. So people think, oh, there's something special, something great about high visual acuity, usually. But not every case. We don't always want the maximum visual acuity. There's certain times when it's crucial. If somebody's trying to pick the green wire from the blue wire, you want to be sure that they know they can see it clearly. If they're looking at labels on boxes and other kinds of tasks. But there's plenty of tasks where it doesn't really matter. In fact, we probably want to just have a different ambience. So there's nothing that says we need that bluer light. You know, it's hard. So a lot of people don't resonate with kelvins. You're talking to your customers, your clients, you're talking kelvins, or what is this guy talking about? So they, in retail, they use, different terms. They try to use, natural or daylight. So this is where the misconceptions come in, although I don't know what natural means. And then bright, bright isn't a color. And then we've got soft white. That's what is this, bathroom tissue? So it's confusing. And then of course there's no consistency. We've got cool here for 35 to 4,100. We've got cool here for 5,000. We've got cool up there for 6,500. So if you're, they're all relatively cool, but it's hard to find something that's consistent. So I don't know if you've noticed there's these lighting fact labels that are out. They list the lumens. Typical 60-watt light bulbs, about 800 lumens. It's not a bad thing to know that. So you can have a reference point if you're looking at even fixtures, and they say, oh, it puts off 1,000 lumens. You have some sense of where that is in relation to, say, a 60-watt light bulb. Because that's still something that we're used to. And it gives other information. And then, of course, it'll tell the light appearance. They're really fixate on the Kelvin. They don't say Kelvin, they say 3,000 or 2,700, but then they say warm compared to cool. Yeah.
You see a 60-watt light bulb instead of 60-watt incandescent, 60-watt LED.
Well, there you go. I mean, that 60 watts of LED is a lot. Exactly. A lot. So yeah, I was referring to 60-watt incandescent. Yeah, no, that's a reason. So how do we get white light with LEDs? One way is with 3-color mixing. And that was a way that was done in the early days. And honestly, it doesn't work very well. You'll still see it in some applications, but for the most part, when you look at a white light LED, what's happening is you've got blue light source, and then you've got yellow phosphors that dope that light source. So if we look at this white light LED, sorry, it's a little glary, what we've got in here is a blue, what they call blue pump. Let's show you real briefly. It couldn't get much bluer than that. But when you put a phosphor in front of it, this is just a piece of yellow plastic. It's plastic embedded with phosphors. We get white light. And that's the magic, but that's also why LEDs are sort of naturally blue heavy. Even though they look white, they don't look necessarily blue. This is a pretty, this looks like an incandescent bulb. If I put this in a lampshade, you wouldn't tell the difference. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Here's some, so this is what we call a spectral power distribution curve for different light sources. Standard incandescent bulb, halogen bulb, halogen and incandescent are the same thing, really. One thing that's interesting to notice, well, and then just here's some LEDs, a warm LED, it's got more in the red and yellow, less blue, and then of course daylight. But if you look at these incandescent sources, really most of their light, most of their energy is non-visible. And that's in the infrared and heat, which is why they're so inefficient. We can have dynamic lighting, things we couldn't do before, so we can mix phosphors in
As you're moving in front of the screen, the folks online can't really hear you because the mic's.
Oh, right, yeah, no, is this a laser pointer? Oh, it's a microphone.
You can just leave that on the table.
Oh, I see. All right, so we have this one here. We can turn it on, and that. We couldn't do that, 10 years ago. So we can low output, high output, and a cooler output. This is a bulb that Philips came up with about 15 years ago, I think. 10 years ago, and never quite caught them.
And so the LEDs are still using the phosphorus to get rid of the blue. That's not changing.
We're not getting rid of the blue, they're transforming.
Or
it.
transforming.
Yeah,
That's still the same place.
Yeah.
So how does that one change? It's the same phosphorus. How does that one change tone?
This one actually, well, just sort of the same way these ones do. If you look here, there's 2 circuits in that chip set, and it's weighted towards one or the other. Does that make sense? You can see those lines, just like here. This is a little different. Probably might be more similar to what's happening there. There's 2 different chips.
Oh,
So you're
so
just
it's not
shifting.
actually the LED chip, the size not changing. It's just
No.
chips.
It's multiple filaments, yeah.
You remind us what a CCP is.
Correlated color temperature. Thank you. Yeah, so that's that's just shifting it from the cooler to the warmer.
Are you guys talk about CRI?
Yeah.
How does that?
In fact, we'll talk about it in just a second. Yep, we're going to talk about it. So dynamic. This doesn't project that well, but here we've got a kind of cool setting, 6500. This is sort of a 3500 there in the center. And this, so you could, just as like if you had a neutral light, and then you could switch to warmer, cooler, choose and somewhere in between. So, right, so that's color temperature we've talked. Color rendering is a different thing. That's CRI, color rendering index. And, with color temperature, I'm agnostic. If someone likes blue light, great. If someone likes really warm light, fine. If they want neutral, great. But when it comes to, it's like making paint. When it comes to color rendering, there's just some that's better than others. It doesn't mean in every case you have to use the best there is, because there's a cost, a physical cost to doing that, and also so like the higher color rendering usually costs more, and it also is a little less efficient. So you get slightly less luminous. So if you're doing a parking garage, you don't want to be down here. People need to be able to find your car. They don't tell a tan car from a light blue car. But if they're in this range, they can find it or just find in a living room or some other space they want to be in this.
So, but I still don't explain the difference. Like I always thought of good color CRI is kind of like the difference between like a good pair of sunglasses and a cheap pair of sunglasses. You initially can't see the difference with a good pair, but over time your eyes get more. You need a good pair of sunglasses so that your eyes just don't get as fatigued. And it's same with color rendering. Like what does color rendering mean? Like that kid's hair is going to be more.
Yeah, but you look at the difference. This is the mediocre color rendering, and there's the same color temperature on paper. They're both about 41.
Wow. So those are both the same color temperature.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't quite render that well, but these are from color boxes at the lab that we used to have.
I guess that's what I'm getting at. What's the relationship of color temperature to CRI? I know you get a lower ERI if you go to a 2700 Kelvin.
Right. So in theory, you can only compare color rendering of light sources of very similar color temperatures. Right. So you can't compare 2700 Kelvin to a 6500 Kelvin CRI.
So they'll get spreadsheets will give you like they'll tell you like for like a 3500 Kelvin light bulb if it's 95 CRI, then you drop down to 2700.
It could be 95 as well.
Well, not the one I look at.
Yeah.
But and I'm like, well, does it really make that much difference to go that higher color temperature to go that?
No, they're not connected. So there's no. Yeah.
Is the color rendering kind of similar to that the chart you said showed back there with the spikes where like the LEDs have the spikes?
Well, here's it. We'll go one more on color rendering. Then it's time of plan. Forge ahead. So the color rendering index is derived from a series of 8 pastel chips. We could spend the entire time talking about this. Unfortunately, we can't. But it's based on these 8 chips and how your light source reacts to those chips. And it's an average, so this call it CRI are A. And so you can have a color rendering of 87, 82, 90, whatever. These are different light sources. But one of the problems we have with early LEDs and compact fluorescents is they could have a high rated average, because they're going to be weighted towards the blues. They're going to render the blues and the yellows and the greens very well, but not the reds so well. And so here we have this R9, and here's R9, so we have saturated red, yellow, green, and they're often very weak in rendering that. And so what is red? We look at people's complexions and get a sense of how we feel about space. And people look kind of ill. We kind of think, well, this isn't a great place to be. We're not consciously thinking that, but we want to be somewhere else. So if the reds are rendered better, we feel better. And so the modern LEDs have boosted that R9. You won't see that on the lighting facts label. This is kind of up there. But if you are looking at spec sheets for even some higher end residential product, you're gonna find an R9 valuable. Mostly product that's higher quality is gonna happen. So if you're spending $80 for LED recessed can, you're probably not gonna get, it'll probably be okay, but it may not be quite where it ought to be. Yes,
CRI, how does daylight work with CRI? Is it very?
Oh, we'll look at that in a second. So the one thing about lighting, again, is intensity. And that triggers things for us. So these two pictures are from two different, let's say, retirement facilities. So people are living here, but it's a sort of commercial setting. And if the corridors are really bright all the time, they never get that nighttime view. But if they're really dim all the time, it's like a twilight. And so you need to be able to change that lighting to respond to that. And that's where we get into this kind of idea of human-centric lighting. There's a whole website about it. I'm not a proponent of it. I think but basically it's the same. The properties of dimming and color temperature shifting, improve rhythm, mood, visual acuity, etc. So I think there's something to that. I don't think you need to simply buy into that brand as such, but I think we need to be aware of those things and not just color temperature. Color temperature can be culturally based as well. Preferences. So, for instance, you look at a study that was done on color temperature, and they were saying that they had warm color temperature of 3,500. Well, we would consider that in this country pretty light, at least neutral. And then they got 5,000 kelvins to be neutral, which most of us would say, if this room was lit with 5,000 kelvins, we'd be like, wow. And then 3,500 is the bluish. And so the test scores, they felt they were more alert when they really blue light, which would be the case if you drank 3 cups of coffee, you're going to feel pretty alert. But you don't necessarily want to do that all the time. So a lot of these studies that we look at, we're done for just a couple of weeks or months, but I think most of us are in for the long haul, right? I mean, we look at decades of how we interact with architecture. Yep. Many decades. So the blue light can be a good way to balance. I've found that if you've got a lot of daylight coming into a space and you like the deep interior with really warm light, it feels kind of dull. So it can be a good way during the day to balance out some of that daylight that you've introduced. But at night, there's some settings where maybe there's a safety issue or a productivity issue where you can't really adjust the color. I'm not convinced that's the case, but it could be an argument. There's other cases where you could, so maybe these students are going to a class twice a week for 2 hours, but this instructor's there all night long, every day, teaching 2 classes a night, 5 days a week. The guiding works in this grocery store. Again, short-term benefits. If I'm going to take that test, maybe it helps me stay awake. Maybe I can concentrate better, and that might be good. Maybe that's a tool that we can use, but not every day, all day, potentially. I used to have a bottle of booze, a pack of cigarettes up there, but it created people. It's smoke for fine. All right, anyway, so CTD is limited tool misplaced. Right? But it's the one that people can see, they can tell, oh, look at that. So, but there's all these other things, the quantity, the duration, the timing, all those things are what are going to affect our responses. And then, of course, there's other colors, you know, that we still don't know about. I mean, there's this whole thing about red light. This is the Lighting Research Center in Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York. They've done a lot of studies on lighting and human performance and behavior. You know, red light results show that it can not only improve alertness, but it can also improve certain types of performance at night without affecting melatonin. Well, that's interesting. NASA, you know, is apparently studying red light to do some healing things. So all of this stuff is brand new. Doesn't mean go run right out and get red lights. It's all areas of study. So, you know, here we are in the middle of this, and there's all this information coming at us, and some of it is based on other people's, you know, concerns and interests, and it's not all. We just all have to take it with a grain of salt. Again, other things that can affect our circadian disruptions, staying awake in a dim room, limited exposure to daylight, etc. So until we know more, I think we need to be careful. Just a little thing. This is at the lab, our classroom. We had fixtures in there that we could tune, and so this is a split screen where we had a cooler and a warmer. So you can look at the spectral power distribution at the 6500 Kelvin, a lot of blue. Here we can see, so we had a spectrometer that can read generate these graphs, high color rendering, low R9, about 50-foot candles, almost done. Here we have a neutral one, high CRI, a little higher R9, same 50-foot candles. Here's one 2700 Kelvin or so. R9 went down strangely. I think that's because what's happening is we're bringing down the blue, but really the phosphors are generating a lot of yellow, and so it becomes maybe a little more yellow dominant. So the R9 is low, still about 50-foot candles. Then we did a thing. This room had big old solar tubes in it. These 6 solar tubes. So we turned off the electric lights and turned on open the solar tubes. And they're the 24-inch ones, and through the magic of film, it looks brighter than it did here, but it's actually 25-foot candles instead of, this is 50-foot candles, this is 25-foot candles. But the point of this, and then you look at the spectral power distribution, that's daylight. There's the warmer one. And this is actual daylight. 50, about 5,000 kelvins, 98 CRI, 97 R9. But then I went out in the parking lot. It was over 6,000 foot candles. It was a cloudy day. This wasn't sunlight. Same day, I just, you know, so we took our reading with the solar tubes, ran outside, took another reading. Anyway, I think that's it for me. Thank you. We can, like I said, we can talk about this all day, but I think we need to move on. So, I think maybe I should say I can talk about this all day.
Are you introducing Nathanael or Beth?
Okay. So
I can introduce myself.
Okay.
Anyways, sorry, this is our first one in 3 years, so I wasn't sure what Steve was doing, but all right, thank you so much, Eric. I actually thought that was really fascinating. I could have had you talk about it all day, but Nathanael will also be fascinating.
Yes.
So Nathanael Washam, Luminous Northwest.
Yeah.
Steve is getting you queued up, and the other thing that I did not say, after this, we are going to be heading over, once we wrap up here, we're going to head over to Jellyfish Brewing to hang out, and we could chat more about this and all kinds of stuff.
Love if you're.
I will stay here. I'll just be really demonstrative. When I point like this, you'll just have to know exactly what I'm pointing at. All right. Cool. Well, I really like Eric talking and then me talking is Eric's got like, this is all like, I geek out about all that stuff like that Eric's talking about. It's super cool. There's this technical kind of like, oh, it's nuanced. There's all this stuff to go into it. Like, go look this up and you'll find all sorts of interesting things. But it's a very interesting kind of research into that. What I want to talk about in the second half is taking all of that and kind of from our perspective as lighting designers, okay, what are just some really, like, go do that research, kind of figure out some nitty gritty stuff for yourself. And then for what we have like right now, what can we do? Like what can we actually go out and buy? So most of what we do is residential. So I'll mostly be talking residential, but I will give some shout outs to kind of commercial stuff as well. How do we actually apply some of this kind of right now? And more than happy, Eric, if anything I say here, you'd be like, no, that's not true. I doubt it, but feel free. Because again, there are different opinions on this. And I agree with Eric very much. It's a sort of, well, maybe. We work with a lot of homeowner clients who are really sensitive to certain types of light that we don't hear all of our clients say the same thing. So, okay, you're really, and because guess what? Humans are different also. So that kind of makes the complexity even bigger because we're all different. So, not going to talk about CCT too much, which is that color coordinated temperature, which is that warmish to the coolish. But I did want to talk about, so how do we then kind of apply that? Kind of a quick and dirty, how to think about this quickly, but feel free to, again, as I said, geek out on your own. In a space, it needs light. What color temperature do we use? Couple questions to ask. First question is, what is the color temperature of life outside when that light is going to be used inside that room? So is it during the day? Then maybe something that's a little bit higher. If it is nighttime outside, the color temperature is 0 in darkness. I don't know what that is, but fire is what we're typically used to. So those warmer color temperatures typically is going to be a thing to go, what is the color outside of the light? Maybe try to match that if you can. What is the energy level or the mood or the atmosphere that the occupants want inside that room? Because there is an energy level perceived, and it's not just psychological. There is some physiological. Again, this is where, well, how much? What is it? I don't know. We're researching that, and by we, I mean other people. But a candle tends to have a lower energy, cozy feel than a big blue bright light in an industrial complex. There seems to be higher energy with that. Use that to your advantage. As Eric said, kind of use this as a tool. Hey, you want to be high energy? Maybe a higher color temperature. Lower energy, lower color temperature. What materials and tones of the finishes are in the space? So one of the things that we like to do for people who are trying to figure out, so for most residences, we're doing 2700 Kelvin, but sometimes 3000 Kelvin. And usually what we say to them is, go look at it. Because most people, when they can actually see it, whether it's at a store or something like that, or we have samples that they can use, like, oh yeah, I like this one. There's an immediate sort of response for that. But one way that we say to think about it is, oh, you know what? I was supposed to be hitting slides. There's a CCT outside, desired energy level, materials and tones. Okay, apologies for that. If you want a really, really white kitchen, there. If you put a 2700 Kelvin light system in there, more than likely at night, when you turn those lights on, that will kind of look a little bit more cream. But if you want that crisp Arctic white, again, go to the paint store. There's tons of it, but those really sharp, bright whites, if you want it to feel like that at night, let's say it's a restaurant or something like that, then you might want to go to that higher color temperature because it's going to have, again, whether you call it neutral, whether you call it bright, it tends to have more of that sharper crisper white feel. But if you don't want that, or you want that during the day, daylight comes in, crisp white, but then at night you want it that warmer, kind of a softer tone, then your electric light is going to want to be 2700 Kelvin because you actually want it to feel a little bit different at night. Following so far? It's okay? Okay, cool. Remembering to click buttons. Rules of thumb. It went to glare. Sorry. 2700 Kelvin. If the space is mostly going to be at night and you want a cozy feel, 3000 Kelvin. If you want a crisp, sometimes we say a hotel feel. Most hospitality hotel stuff is at 3000 Kelvin. Go there next time. You'll notice it's a little bit different. Not always, but usually. Anything that's like daytime office type stuff, garages, mechanical rooms, that's where that visual acuity might come in, and that higher color temperature can be a help there. Good so far. You now can put the right color temperature in any room. If we had a pop quiz, awesome. Glare. Glare means too much contrast. We have a tile sample on the left, mostly white, but a good amount of black. We would say that is medium-ish contrast. The tile sample on the right, mostly black, a few white pieces of tile, high contrast. There's more of one color than the other. An imbalance of dark to light. That is kind of where glare then starts. This is just, again, a way to think about what glare is. One person's glare is another person's sparkle. That, so there is a appropriate place for glare. Diamond rings are glary in an amazing way. But there are some situations in living spaces, in spaces where humans are, where we do not want glare. Directional lighting, track lighting. Gotta love putting that in the middle of a kitchen or a middle of a room and then pointing it to the outsides of the room, which means whenever you're at the outside of the room and you're looking anywhere else, you have a light shining right in your eyes. They're usually just thinking this is a cheap way to put what seems to be bright light in a round kitchen or something like that. It doesn't work that way though. So only point directional lights to areas where there will be no occupants. Keep directional lighting on the perimeters pointed towards walls. So art, a directional light that is fairly close to an piece of art, pointed at the art, you're not going to have it in your eye. Pretty much, if you don't put directional light in the middle of a room, you're probably going to be okay. But that is a little bit of an overstatement. Downlighting, disc lights. Don't use them if you don't have to. They're really helpful for basement spaces or spaces where you don't have any plenum and you can't put a hole recessed, or you need something really okay. But the problem is that lens right there is a bright glowing surface. The ceiling around it, now obviously this is black, but the ceiling around it is not going to be lit. So you have high light surrounded by not very much light. That is high contrast equals glare. This is why a recessed can is recessed, because then you don't see the light source and the glare is less, which is good. The light source, typically, because of viewing angles, it depends on the height of the ceiling, blah, 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 blah. If it's recessed at least 2 inches, 3 inches is great. If the light source is recessed into the ceiling, then that is better-ish as far as glare. The larger the surface area with the same amount of light, the less glare. So ceiling panels that are not massively bright actually have less glare than a fixture that's the same amount of lumen output that is skinny and long. That is less comfortable to the eye than a larger surface. I'm really screaming through this. Is that okay? We're good. All right. Decorative lighting. So this is exposed lamps or clear shades. They're really popular. They look really cool and they're really glary. Oh, yeah, Eric. Right. Yes. Clear glass shade. There we go. But yeah, exactly. But and I, as a designer, it looks cool. But as the Eco Building Guild knows, just because something looks cool isn't a reason to do it. Actually, that's anybody in life. Just because it's cool doesn't mean you should do it. Yeah, something I say to my kids all the time. The problem is you have if you're going to do something like this or with a bare bulb, you're working with a filament, even with the LEDs. The filaments, they're coating the filament, so you now have a very small surface area where all the light is coming from. Equals glare. Everyone together for the next time. So you can keep those on really low. In the bar, when you go in and when it was really popular to have the filament light bulbs, they're on very low because you need hardly any light to have it feel cool and cozy. And so it looks awesome. But you try to put that in a bathroom where you need a lot of light. Yeah, I can see to put on my makeup or shave as you're, squinting up at the light. So frosted glass or fabric if you need to get a lot of light from that fixture. Yeah, and just in general, anything like the LEDs can be, especially the LED tape fixtures. It's really small, awesome. Except really small and really bright starts to mean glare. So make sure it's hidden from view. You don't want to have that glare coming from a really small light source. Bright is good from a small package. Great, right? Except if you can see it. That's glare, uncomfortable, health issues. EMF. This is also something that we could talk about for a very long time. This is also very personal to different people, are very sensitive, a lot more sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. But my down and dirty version of this is anything with electricity gives off electromagnetic frequencies. Anything it is electricity. But when you then change that electricity, specifically in what we call drivers or ballast, something that takes the electricity and changes it to a different voltage or something like that, you're doing things, you're manipulating the electric current. You can have a clean way to do that, or you can have something that makes these spikes through that sine wave, and that is what is called dirty electricity. Again, this is where research is still going on. In general, is it great to have dirty electricity? No. Should you try to have clean electricity? Yes. How bad is dirty electricity? We don't know. It depends. So this is where it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. Again, higher quality products are going to tend to have better drivers who have cleaner, but it's kind of maybe a question to ask people, or if someone brings that to you, it's something to kind of be aware of. Yes.
Are you only referring to it in the context of what's coming out from the fixture, or does that also happen with the electrical system in an old house?
Yeah, I know less about that because that's more of an electrician thing for me. In fact, probably some of you could probably answer that better than I could. But specifically from fixtures, when it comes to lighting fixtures, and when we specify lighting fixtures, that is where when you have a dimmer or when you have a driver, something that's kind of changing the electricity, there's a potential for that to do that in a cleaner or more dirty way, which then can potentially affect people's health because of that. So, and so if you thought it was hard to find information on R9 type stuff, good luck finding that. I mean, it's really tough. So it's where you would have to call a manufacturer and they'd have to get their expert on the line because there's a chance that they have it somewhere, but it's digging. No, they could. And I don't know, maybe. I will say this though, fluorescence light bulbs, because of the way that the ballasts work, it was almost consistently going to be a pretty dirty electricity. That was one of the many downsides to fluorescent lamps. With LEDs, you have the potential to do that more cleanly. And again, I can't speak for every single manufacturer that's out there because there are a gajillion of them. But yeah, it's in general, LEDs are better than fluorescent. Higher quality LEDs should be better than lower quality LEDs, but maybe lower quality LEDs would be fine too. You know, so this one's a really tricky one. This one's a really tricky one. Lighting for behavior. So again, those ones were kind of more health-ish related. What I'm going to talk about now is kind of an in-between, and when John reached out to me to kind of ask me speak again for this, it's one of the things that we really work on as designers is, and we mentioned this again, a couple of the things like how do you pick color temperature and stuff like that, is thinking about what are you wanting to do in a space. A lot of times, designers, electrical engineers, people, when they think about light, they think about brightness. When I'm putting lights into a space because I want there to be light in there so people can see, which is true. Seeing, visual acuity, one might be able to kind of broaden that a little bit to be able to see things is important. At least 40 to 50% of what lighting does that's important for us in a room. However, there's a whole ton of other things that are really important that light does to us that is maybe not as thought about or things that we're as conscious of. So I'll cover this, a little bit of that here. And again, this is very much a practical, how do I do things? I have a space, it needs light. What do I do? We talked about this a little bit before. What time of day is the room going to be used when the lights are on? So not when the room is going to be used, because it might be being used during the day and there's windows and you won't be using any lights. If the lights in the room, when will those be on? That's important to know. That gets into color temperature, all that type of stuff. So these are questions to ask yourself as you're thinking through a room and how to light that. What materials and tones, so light, medium, dark, are going to make up the space? Light tones, you can put light on them and the space will feel bright. Dark tones, you can put light on the same amount of light on them and the room might feel dark. This is fairly straightforward. If you are using darker tones, if there are a lot of darker tones that are going to be reflecting that light, you're going to need more light to make the space feel brighter. And it will always look like that darker tone, just a well-lit version of that tone. You can't have an all-black kitchen and it's going to feel super bright at night. It will feel like well-lit black. Something that people don't always think about when they're, and I'll just give this quick note. Most of us think about rooms in the daytime, in our brains, in our imagination, in our rendering systems, everything. We're constantly thinking about things in daylight. It's okay, I do it too. But if you're thinking about lighting, you're rarely going to be, unless it's a commercial space, you're rarely going to be using those lights, when it's daylight. So you have to start thinking about what does this room look like at night? And that's something that we as lighting designers have gotten really, really good at. So think about it at night. It's another question to ask. What are we doing? Actually, let me go back a little bit. Can I go back? Oh, yes. Another important thing. Vertical spaces are going to reflect light the most. So if you have to put light on a floor, wall, ceiling, and you want it to feel bright, put it on a wall. Second space is the ceiling. That gives us a fair amount of brightness feeling in a space. So if you want it to feel extra bright, put some more light on the ceiling. Light on the floor doesn't do much. Recessed down lights. Putting a lot of light on a floor. You have to put a ton of them in order for it to feel bright because you're lighting a surface that we don't pay much attention to. Like You look like this, you're looking right here. We walk like this, we're seeing this range right here. That's your vertical surfaces. So plan your lights around those vertical surfaces, again, with those tones. What are you doing in the space? This is really, 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 really important. We've got people eating dinner. We've got people sleeping. We've got people playing in the living room. But is it a living room with kids? Is it a living room for people who are retired? Is it a lobby for a hotel? What is going on in that space? And then that goes back to those other questions. What are the energy level? When are people going to be in the, what are they doing in the space is going to be one of the biggest drivers for what type of light and where should I put it? So again, just putting light in a room, you know, back in the 50s, 60s, just put a light in the middle of the room, which is better than the 70s when they said, no light in the middle of the room. Floor lamps, perfect. What do the occupants want the space to look and feel like? These are some words that are, when we ask that question to our clients, that they will give us sometimes. Those will change what kind of lights, what color, temperature potentially, where the lights are. They'll also probably affect other aspects of what you're doing in the space as well. So they're just good questions to ask in general. So those are questions to ask when you're thinking about, how do I light a room? I want to talk briefly about control options. We have lovely people from Better Bricks in the back. Definitely check them out. I will mention them a little bit briefly at the end here. A lot of this is going to be, the first part here is mostly for residential situations. Things to think about for control options for your lights. Where will I be when I need to turn on the light? Again, we have a saying at my firm, switching is really straightforward until it's not. So a lot of times it's really straightforward. Sometimes it gets really tricky, and I think it's really helpful to kind of think through it always. Where are you going to be when you want to control the light? Dimmers are inexpensive. You can kind of put them everywhere. Maybe not hallways, maybe not closets, but just put a dimmer on it. It'll solve all your, no, okay, no, it won't solve all your problems. That's another misnomer. Well, we put a ton of recessed downlights in the living room. Just put a dimmer on it. It'll be okay. No, it's still going to be a ton of downlight onto your floor that makes you look horrible and lots of shadows. And you can have that either look horrible brightly or look horrible dimly. Obviously an opinion over here. But dimmer doesn't solve everything, but gee, it does solve a lot of things. So put a dimmer on it. Smart lighting. It used to be that if you want to have smart lighting in a home, it was $10,000 minimum and a completely different wiring program. And that's awesome. Some people could do that. Now, with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and Zigbee and all sorts of other crazy, actually, Zigbee even one of those? It might not even, all sorts of names with that. We can do that fairly inexpensively. And there's a lot of options on Amazon too that you could go with. Quality control on that is a little iffy, but all that to say it's accessible. One of the things that you might want to think about of why would you do smart lighting? Do you need to control the lights remotely? Do you want to turn on lights when you're not in the house? Or turn a light on in a different part of the house when you're not there? That would be your reason to get smart lighting. Connecting spaces that have multiple looks. So open floor plans for residential. You've got a lot of layers of light in the living room. You got some layers of light in the dining room. Your kitchen has a couple layers of light. So when you're done with dinner and you've moved everything into the kitchen and now you want to go to the living room, you have to hit the 3 lights in the kitchen, and then you have to hit the 2 lights in the dining room, and then you have to hit the 4 lights in the living room to really get it the way that you want it. It's not horrible, you know, first world problems. Or you could press one button One button's nice. So that's an option. I want to have multiple looks. Oh, I actually want to change what I just had in these 3 spaces to something different. One more button. And now it's, and again, you can adjust those as you need to, but especially when you have complexity as far as circuits and they're all combined and you would have to kind of go around, smart lighting might be a good choice for you. Aging in place. Oh, yeah.
With dimmers, it's great to be able to control the lighting, the intensity in
Yes.
space. But also it'd be fantastic if dimmers or something else very simple like that could also control the color. Right?
Yes.
Because when you're changing the use of a room, going from dinner to intimacy or to whatever,
Yes.
or to a work environment or if you're in a classroom, you suddenly want your kids to do really well in the test, so you want to go to a higher temperature for an hour.
Yeah. And I would love that. And there are some options where you can do that. It's yep. Yeah, how much money? So again, to give a little shout out to Better Bricks and stuff like that. So in the commercial space, there's a lot because of the volume that they're purchasing in and all those, and there's more codes and stuff like that. There's energy codes that go with that. There's a little bit more accessibility for this in those spaces. And you can kind of do that automatically. You can do that manually. There's much more of that. And again, a company like Microsoft can say, oh, we can get this much more productivity from our people, or they come in sick less because they're, okay. All right. For residential spaces, again, if you have enough money, definitely. If you don't have a ton of money, the Hue lamps. Yeah. And there's tricky things that come from that because it's a light bulb. So now you have to get a different control system because you're not doing it from a regular wiring situation. You're doing it directly with the light. So it gets a little complicated. That's my biggest hope. Like if I could just wave a wand right now for residential or consumer grade lighting, would be to have an easy way to have color temperature. And I'll even change it to color temperature. I don't even need to manually control it. If it is early up until 9 in the morning, it's 2,700 Kelvin. And then it slowly goes up to 5,000 Kelvin at noon. And then it slowly goes back down to 2,700 Kelvin by 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I'd take it. Absolutely. It's not here yet. And if I start a lighting manufacturer company, that's what I would do. But I'm probably not going to start a lighting manufacturer company. But if any of you want to start a lighting manufacturer company, can you please do that? I have lots of people who would use it. So it is. And if you know something specific, talk to me afterwards. And then again, another brief shout out. So especially in commercial spaces, you have LLC. Just say LLC. It's good. Oh, lighting. No, local. There's level controls is the last LC. Luminaire level. Light level. Yes, it is. There's too many L's, but they can't get rid of them. So pretty much there's a sensor in your fixture that senses what the color temperature is outside, or how many people are there in the room, or is there movement, and is able to do some of that on its own per fixture. Means you don't have to have some separate control system that's doing all that as well. So it simplifies a lot of things. Check it out. Fixture options. How am I doing on time? I'm okay. This is going to be, again, this is a really quick, we as lighting designers like to paint with really fine brushes and make a really nice piece of work, piece of art. But if you think about these things, I'm going to talk about different types of fixtures and why you might want to use them or where. Recessed downlights. When you want bright light directly underneath that fixture. Task lighting. Great idea. Cool. You don't want a lot of glare? Great. Perfect. If you don't want to have any decorative or visual impact in the space, but you still want light. This is probably going to be your best option. The invisible light is yet to be, if you're a lighting manufacturer, can do an invisible light, great. Well, we have that too, but you can't see it. Those are great uses for that type of a light. Generally, lighting rooms that are social rooms, we would suggest not to use downlights if possible. Ceiling fixtures. Do you want to create a center to the room, a visual center to the room? So as soon as you walk in, you know where the middle of the space is, or you want to enhance, oh, the couch is here and there and the fireplace is right here. This is a great way to do that. We see a fixture on the ceiling and we immediately draw an energy line down to the floor and say, that's a space that I should be. Entryway, you walk in. Oh, I am right where I'm supposed to be. Sit at a dining room table. Oh, I'm right where I need to be. You go over an island that has pendants. Oh, I'm right where I need to be. You hang a pendant in a corner of a bedroom because it looks cool over your dirty wastebasket. Yeah. Am I supposed to be there? So keep that in mind. Consistent soft lighting throughout a space. Recessed downlights, because they're directional, are necessarily going to give more shadows. If you want fewer shadows, then get this type of fixture, which is throwing light everywhere, which is bouncing more, which then reduces shadows. Now, it's not going to put as much light directly beneath it as the recessed downlight will. But you can also, you get that bright enough, it's going to put an okay amount of light underneath it, and everywhere else, fewer shadows. So again, social spaces where you don't want a lot of shadows, these can be a great choice. If you want light higher up in a narrow space, closets, pantries, even hallways a little bit, because these give out light sideways, they're going to light spaces that are closer to where our heads are or where we have objects. They're going to light those spaces better than recessed downlights. And again, they're also then putting light on walls more, which again, remember, we see walls more than any other surface. So they often, again, you can put recessed downlights closer to walls, but often we'll be putting more light on a wall than 4 recessed downlights that are kind of middle-ish in a room. It's cheaper too. Pendants. Similar-ish to ceiling fixtures, but they hang down lower. Also create a center to the room, even more so. Make a very large visual impact. And especially they take up empty volume. So if you walk into a room that has just recessed downlights, it feels like a box that has furniture on the bottom. But if you put something up above, because you have, even right now, if you look around, there's a ton of empty space up here. And then there's stuff once you get it a little bit higher, but there's a whole ton of empty space right here. And if you hang something right in there, low enough to kind of see that, oh, it's got nothing to compete with. It takes a lot of visual attention from the eye is going to look at that. If you want that, use that to your advantage. Yeah. Sconces. Creating a glow by a sitting area that is next to a wall. So floor lamp, table lamp without the floor or table. You can add brightness to the perimeter of large rooms. You don't want to have all your light on the perimeter if your furniture is not on the perimeter. Because again, that says, oh, I'm in the middle, but I should be on the outsides. So you got to be careful with that. You got to make sure you have enough light where you're actually sitting. But if it's a larger room and you want to add a little bit more brightness to the space, putting those on the walls, great idea. Draw visual attention to an object between them. Bookending a piece of art or something like that, or on either side of a nice doorway that's an entry or something like that. And then finally, putting really good light on a face in front of a mirror. It's a really good reason to use a sconce on a wall. It's right next to your face. Much better than something over the top, which is fine, but it's just further away. It's going to cause more shadows. Here you have much more of a balance. So it's like the Hollywood lights without having all of the Hollywood lights, because most of us probably don't want that in most of our bathrooms. That's it. I'll turn off the fire hose. And you all are lighting designers. Congratulations. Want to turn, you know where the lights are. You want to turn those on and you have some questions?
And if folks are asking questions here, if you don't mind, there's a couple of mics out on the table. Folks online can't hear if you ask questions. So if you'll hit that button so the green light would come on if you're asking a question on that side of the room, it would be helpful.
Yeah, Owl City Light really screw up with all those streetlights they put in everywhere. Did they get sued?
You know, they were actually at the forefront of doing that. So they were a little early, but no, I think
They're horrible. I hate them.
compared to what?
What?
Compared to what?
Compared to the old fashioned orange lights were so nice. You could walk on the sidewalk and feel nice. You walk anywhere in Europe, they're nicely warm and glowing. It's this nice ambience. Instead, now you walk down the street, you're blinded by glare. And then what it really screws up the whole car thing. I'm going off on a tangent, but the whole like brighter headlight car thing really screws people up because now you really got this bright light glare. Like I hate it. Like the old fashioned car lights. So then now.
You mean the car headlights?
Yeah.
Oh.
So basically, everyone's made these bright blue lights. So now, if you go out at night, your eyes don't adjust to night driving, so you can't see as clearly. My theory.
Yeah, headlights are maybe got a little bit.
Anyways, I hate those streetlights so much.
Well, you know, it's a matter of opinion. Personally, I like them. Yeah. To me, the high pressure sodium, and I don't want to get off track here, but I'm happy to discuss it. The high pressure sodium is very poor color rendering. So you're in a streetscape that feels like some sort of compound. And whereas for me, maybe you see glare, what I see is these little vignettes, and I can see the colors of cherry blossoms at night. Before it was just this kind of gray and more gray. You can see green that you couldn't see before.
So it's so contrasty. It's like it's either really bright or really dark. Whereas
No,
the lumens, it was.
well, that's because the high pressure sodium didn't actually light very well. So it went from not a lot of light to even less light. Now you have street lighting, and maybe there's spaces in between. It's not perfect.
Because they also say now they realize that it's throwing up all the animal nightlife.
Yeah,
Sort of the circadian
yeah,
rhythms, right?
that's
Isn't there
possible.
an article about that?
Yeah, there's lots of articles.
I think that just brings home your guys' point about that we all experience slightly differently.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they should have done is gone to every place where there was a street light and talked to people who were living there and said, hey,
Oh, yeah.
what are you needing? And then, because we all get along with our neighbors really well, right? So, yeah, it's just, that's, again, this is where, you know, we love doing residential because we can sort of do this, hey, what do you want right here? That's the tricky thing about commercial lighting is it's for a large scale. And how do you be respectful to all the things that are going on? And as you all know, like at some point you kind of have to make decisions, and hopefully you're making decisions based on good things and not just budget or anything else.
How do you deal with spouses that have different?
Well,
There's an ointment for that.
what we find is opposites do attract in how they like light. So again, dimmer. Also, because there's also light switches, but that's, you know, it's not usually I don't want no light and light. So dimmers are really nice. And some of that is a little bit more ability to control over smaller areas. So as opposed to one light in the middle of the room, we also have different layers of light. And then training, you need to turn the light off after you leave. I really need you to do that. Vice versa.
So actually, yeah, my wife's always turning lights off and I'm turning them on. And but now with LEDs, you got a little 9-watt LED. See, for me, I didn't leave the light on, I turned the light on. And, and I like to walk into a room and have a little pool of light somewhere. So it's and she's thrifty and she, and so I get it. But I think with one of the things about LEDs that a world-class designer mentioned, we're almost at the point where we don't need controls. We have them if we want them. But some of these energy codes and some of the controls are pretty stringent. And, when you've got a lighting power density in a room that's, at 0.3 watts per square foot, it begs the question. Yes.
So.
Can I ask, we have some online questions.
What?
We have some online questions. So Nabeen is wondering, how do you assess the quality of LEDs?
Assess the quality. Well, there's actually two ways. I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah, no, please.
There'd be two ways. One is with lots of equipment and you come up with numbers and charts and graphs. And the other is with people saying, do I like it or not? And that's going to be vary from individual to individual and possibly even culturally. So not to be glib, but I think that those are, admittedly, we look at R9 and all these things, but that doesn't really tell us how we're going to experience.
Because a good quality fixture is most representative like a halogen, like it doesn't have peaks, right?
Well,
Again,
Or is that not?
if that's what you're wanting.
Yeah.
Eric, your response there, are you talking about like a crowdsource ratings and a whole bunch of people like this?
No, well, that would be one way, certainly. Yeah, but then you'd probably get into a situation where you'd have this bell curve where most people would like it and some people would think it was awful and some people would think it was incredible. I'm a dog walker, so I'm walking around in a neighborhood and I see people in someone's living room and it's got all this blue light in there. They've got a bunch of recess cans and they're blue. And I wonder in my mind, I could see one of three things. They either like it, they're like, yeah, this is what I wanted. They don't notice, which is possible. Or they think, well, this LED, that's just how it is. And I'm not sure, I can't explain it. I couldn't imagine having my living room lit like a gymnasium. But I see it. So I don't know.
Is the cost of LEDs at all an indicator of quality?
Yeah.
Yeah,
As I would say, as much as it is with anything else.
yeah. I mean, you can get a perfectly good car without spending a ton of money, safe, comfortable, lasts a long time.
But if you're lighting your
generally-
Mona Lisa, you're probably gonna want to dig into numbers a lot.
So you're saying, but
I got another question for you.
Yeah.
You were talking about the 60s thing of putting a light in the middle of the room. Then you sort of talked a lot about a lot of different things about that particular went away, but then you showed another image with the same thing. So what do you do? You have somebody's new house, new bedroom. What is the contemporary or current thing to do?
He said it. Oh, good. Well, layers.
Yeah, like it might be the right choice. Like our go-to standard for a bedroom, ceiling mount fixture, 3 sockets, 2 sockets, put in a 60-watt equivalent, not bright enough, put in a 75-watt equivalent in the middle of the room. That works great for most bedrooms. That works for a lot of living rooms. Does that work in a kitchen? Maybe sometimes. So I think from our perspective, it's what is the fixture going to do to the space? Is that what we're wanting for what is being done in the space by the occupants? So yeah, like I think my comment in this, 50s, 60s, they just put a light in the middle of the room. They just did that in all the rooms. There was it's our blanket. Now we just put recessed cans and everything. It's the exact same thing. It's just a blanket usage because all we need is light. No, all we need is love. What we need is specific light for specific situations.
one variation on that I like, especially if you're on a budget, is you put the light in the middle of the room, but you also have a switched outlet that's so that you can have, because a lot of times what people want to do is they'll just want to flip on a light that's turns on a bedside lamp. Now, if they're sorting laundry or something else, you want to flip on that overhead light so you can get a lot of light. But often they'll just go to that switched outlet and turn on that lamp. You know, and then
To go back to that question though, real quick, I think from what Eric was saying is the higher the CRI, the better. Almost ish always. Like if you have a choice between a lower CRI and higher, more than likely the higher CRI is going to be better. But color temperature, one isn't better than the other. Brightness, everything's being made to be brighter, 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 brighter. We're having trouble finding fixtures that aren't glary because they're so bright. We want things to be so there are not a whole ton of metrics. It becomes preference.
How does a cheap China manufacturer tell you it's got a 92 CRI? And you're telling me it's not good quality? Like, what am I looking for? And it seemed like what you just pointed out, there's the whole charts. So you could theoretically, if they'll give it to you, give you that whole chart. And you can see that, well, it's really, really brilliantly CRI at, blue, total crap at red.
Right.
And that averages it out. Is what you're saying.
And there's a chance that could happen. If you get a 97 CRI, it could, again, I think that was done more like tricking, like, oh, hey, we can get a really good CRI. We're going to do that. If you're getting from a manufacturer who isn't trying to just get people to buy their stuff, then probably they're not going to be doing that.
I think it was also a limitation of the technology at the time. And we saw that with compact fluorescence where it'd be 82 CRI or 85 CRI, but it just wouldn't look right. Your skin wouldn't look right.
Why is that? What was wrong with, so they had poor CRI, but was it also like flickering or was it?
Just the
specific CRI?
It was just the phosphors, just the way I don't think they were trying to trick anybody. It was just a limitation. And so when the LEDs came to market, it was, initially the whole thing was to get lumens, higher lumens, because when they first came to market, they weren't very bright. And so you had to get, it's complicated, but you had to get a lot of light because for not as much wattage, so you could get payback because they were really expensive. Then they started developing the phosphor formulations that work better and ways of coupling the phosphors with the LED, with the little chips. And so you could get higher lumens. And then they started seeing that without the high cost. But people started digging in to the color quality once they started being used more generally. Like if you're using for street lighting, 70 is probably fine. Whereas if you're putting it in someone's living room, people are like, this isn't what I expected. So you want 85 or higher CRI in interior spaces. And so they had to find ways to address that. And one was increasing the R9, and that was, it added cost and lumens depreciated when you do that.
So you keep harping on the R9. So that was the big thing. The R9 is the
adding red. It was
red.
Adding more red to the spectral power distribution.
That was the really hard thing for them to overcome. Yeah, that would make it. That's probably why it's really hard to find 2200 Kelvin bulbs.
You can find them, but you're right. Yeah, I've got one on my case here. That's
get those variable
little candle bulb.
So question.
Yeah.
In the design process for new construction or a major remodel addition type of thing, there's an interrelationship of balancing the colors, materials, of the walls, and the lighting. And also when you're considering the colors of the wall, the sheen affects the lighting, obviously, as well. And which comes first, the chicken or the egg? or does the architect, whoever's using the colors, also work with the lighting designer simultaneously, because they're interrelated and interconnected in the choices. I mean, certainly it's easier to change the light bulb to play around with that later on.
But you go to the paint store trying to pick paint. It's a process. You're holding it, looking at all these little chips. You go over by the window, but is that window tinted? You got to go maybe outside in the parking lot to really see it. And then what are the windows like in the residence? you know, and how close. Plus, it's magical. You know, you look at a room that's with daylight coming in from different directions, and it's like you've got 5 different colors of paint. And that's okay. You know, I think as long as you have high quality light.
I want to ask a follow-up question on tagging on to my last question and John's question is, short of hiring you guys, which is obviously the best option, right? How do you have any tips for walking clients through how to even think about this stuff? Because you can put together an electrical plan and you can put some ideas of fixtures on the page, but especially when you're talking about the kitchen, it's really hard to put lighting in the right place in the kitchen.
It's easy. because nothing moves around. Living spaces are all.
Yeah,
Kitchens are easy.
it's similar to what we've kind of been saying this morning. It's really hard to have rules of thumb for lighting because of what we said. I mean, I gave a couple here, and I'm more than happy if people want to go through the guild or email or grab my card afterwards. More than happy to give this outline out to anyone. Kind of what questions to ask. Like a lot of it is information gathering. What are and again, so if you're a designer or even a builder to a little bit as well, like why did you put walls there? Why are you designing it? Because you've asked them questions, they need certain things from that room, and you're making the structure and the volume go with that, or the furniture placement go with that. It's the exact same way with the lighting. You have options, you have different things you can use. You don't just, well, it's this size, so I need 6 recessed downlights as opposed to 4. Like, this is a tool, like there's a lot of things going on with the light. And so you're thinking, do I want to use recessed downlights? What are they going to do in this space? Or do I want a ceiling fixture? Or do I want both? Because they're each going to be doing something different. We've done rooms where they have a ceiling fixture and recessed downlights because they want something that comes from that ceiling fixture and they need something else that they can't get from just that. They also need the recessed downlights. Doesn't look as awesome as one or the other, but they knew that. And they said, okay, we need both of these, so we're going to have both. So I think it's very much a respecting that you have tools and that they're different brushes. Each of these fixtures, again, like different lights, or downlight, ceiling fixtures, pendants, sconces, they're going to do things differently. They're not all the same. And again, like I'm not a genius. From what I said, hey, like you understood what I was saying. You don't have to be like, I don't know how the light. I just like if you just okay, it's gonna come out like this because it's got a metal shade here, so it's only gonna come out like that. Oh, what that's something. Again, it takes time. If you don't have time, you hire us. No, but like that's all it really is. I mean, when you're hiring an expert, it's someone who's thought about it often and they can just do it faster than you can.
The thing I would recommend is look at lighting a lot in different spaces.
Yes.
And just because you've got a fancy new building doesn't mean it's got good lighting. But there's lessons to learn there. And I would say, like, you look at a hotel lobby, those are complex spaces and they've got decorative fixtures. They've got a lot of fixtures you don't notice are recessed lighting things, but they add the layers into that space and they add complexity and magic. And that's where things go wrong, especially on if they're hiring an architect, they probably have expectations. And they're expecting it maybe not to look like the plaza when they walk into their living room, but they probably want it to look, probably want to have artwork, they want to have lit, but maybe they want some decorative fixtures as well. Some sconces or something like that.
I can't reiterate, like one thing to take away from me, forget everything else I said, is what he said. Look at light. Look at this before you go. Maybe not a lot of spaces that you'll be, but go to your house. Whenever you're at someone else's house, what are they doing with their light? I mean, I have an apprentice. That's what I'm telling her. That's the most valuable thing that she can do. She can listen to me talk all day and she has to. But what do your friends have in their living room? What do your parents have in their living room? What do they have in their bathroom? What are the fixtures that they're doing to do that? What are they like? What is it actually doing? What do you feel like? What is it actually doing in the space? And then use that or don't use that.
I'm wondering, do you have, like, you guys when you're dealing with residential clients, not a very different for commercial, but a series of questions, sort of, I mean, you sort of alluded to that, it's like, so, what makes you happy? What, you know, what doesn't make you happy? Like, do you have tried and true questions like?
So luckily for you, I will say it's actually here. And I mean this, like, I'm not being smarmy or anything like that. We ask them, what are you doing in the space? What are the finished tones, light, medium, dark? How do you want it to look and feel? And a little of that is like, what's your style? Like, you're going for contemporary, you're going for farmhouse. Now, it turns out there's a lot to talk about just with those questions. Those are the questions we ask. Now, we've been doing this for a long time, so they can give us those answers and maybe not a ton, and we can extrapolate and do all that really quickly, but that's all we're doing. We're asking those questions and then saying, okay, what type of lights where? We'll do stuff to the room to kind of then get them that, and again, I don't
have to give example images and stuff too, because
Yeah.
a lot of times clients don't know how to express what they're actually thinking, and it's only
Yes.
through working with them over time that you start to get a sense of them, right?
Yeah.
And I just example images, and like, I want you to tell me your thoughts.
Magazine
Only way.
pictures.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not.
Do some of the Pinterest boards that they have, super helpful.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of them are
But
CG rendered and not actual real, and I have to say, well, we can't actually do this because light doesn't actually work this way, because this is actually a rendering, because I can tell because of this and what it looks like.
But that's easy for photographs, but like for lighting, it's harder because photographs.
Yep.
You can't photograph light, right? There's no,
Absolutely.
like you said, like that one photograph you said where it's the same LED, but it's just the way it photographed.
Yeah.
One of your slides.
Oh, yeah, the exposure. Well, the other thing I would say that about pictures, especially in magazines, is a lot of times they're phony, especially like Architectural Digest.
Yeah.
That's all phony lighting.
Good.
Yeah, so you look at this fabulous interior with great dynamics, and you start really look at the shadows, and it's like, oh yeah, they put a light on the floor over there, and they've got, you know, two lights over here washing, you know, and then there's like one funky fixture in the middle of the room suggesting that maybe that did the whole thing. And so you need to calibrate their expectations as well if they're looking at that kind of stuff. You have a question?
Well, for me, I was more of a takeaway is the fact that we always talk about spaces, but I think with lighting, we need to think about surfaces. So, you know, how do you use a space, but what are the surfaces that are going to create the space?
Totally.
Yeah. You don't feel bright. You don't feel like a space is bright because there's a lot of light next to you. You feel like a space is bright because the vertical spaces, the surfaces that you see, which are mostly vertical, those are there, which might be across the room.
Kind of like, is there science to the background of like interrogating with a single ball right above your head?
Oh,
Probably.
Stress. Like, I've never done it, so.
Yeah.
I hope not.
Also makes a good visual on a film noir, but yeah.
Sorry.
High contrast.
My contrast is very just
What's behind the person? I have no idea. Again, this is where we get, you know, this is why we want bright spaces, because back in the day, if we're in the cave, is there a bear back there? All I have is this wooden spear. Am I going to die?
Yeah.
So if I get lots of fire, I know that there's not a bear or a lion that's going to come and eat me. We did that for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. That's still in our lives.
Blinds the person and they can't see who's around.
There you go.
It's just stressful.
That's interesting. I'm gonna take a note of that.
I got another question for you guys.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments on exterior lighting? I know it's kind of doing cool things on the exteriors is all the rage, but do you have any thoughts on that specifically?
Just take streetlights and put them everywhere. John likes that.
We're gonna work on that. We're gonna work on an interrogation street.
Right, yeah.
Well, the other thing I would say is, yeah, people's porch lights are often way too bright. They need
But they have
more
to counteract their eyes adjusted to the street light.
potentially. Well, yeah. So what I would say for exterior lighting though is Like if you're trying to light a deck area or something like that, go with 3 or 4 fixtures as opposed to 1 or 2. 1 or 2 trying to do all the work to get the light out. No, run the electrical out there and have some lights out there and everything at a low level.
Fixtures better, but also
More.
more expensive.
Yeah, well, more at a low level,
At a low, because then you get less shading and it's
less glare.
less glare, right?
Yeah.
So, but then it's expensive, so it's always constant down.
But you know, it is the running the wire, but you don't, you know, good lighting doesn't have to cost a lot. It just takes the.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that, you know, each electrician will charge you by the fixture. Right, it's like, you can add up.
Yeah, the electrical can, you know, especially if you get complicated switching, it can add up from that standpoint.
One of the things that we constantly remind our clients is, do you need light there? Because especially here in the Pacific Northwest, when are you going to be outside? When it's summer, right? And when does it get dark?
Late.
9 o'clock.
I'm in bed by then.
Are you playing poker out on your deck at 10 o'clock at night in the summer? Maybe you are. Can I be invited? But, and is it a space that is right next to your house? Do you have windows that look out? Do you have an entire glass wall that looks out on your deck because you designed it that way? So all that light that's in there is coming through the glass. It's soft, it's low level light, but what are you needing the light for?
Yeah, if you're just sitting
Barbecuing, okay, maybe. But if you're sitting outside at night, shoulder season, let's say it's a beautifully warm summer night, it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Are you doing a task out there or are you talking? So if you want anything, don't you want something that's more of like a table lamp, floor lamp type situation? It's a low level light. Go get one of those LED, go ahead and get it from Amazon. The little globes that change color temperatures and play music, and it's a speaker and USB chargeable, and it's $5. Go put that right in between or on the table right between us. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. You need that much.
But yeah, context.
Additional resources knowing more about healthy lighting and circadian rhythm and things like that, particularly books, publications, websites.
I would look at the Lighting Research Center.
Yep.
The Lighting Research Center, LRC. They, I believe, have somewhat disbanded, but all of their studies are top notch.
Yeah.
So yeah, just do lighting. They're out of Rensselaer Polytechnic in Troy, New York. Rensselaer Polytechnic.
Got a lot of N's and a lot of S's.
But yeah, Lighting Research Center,
Yeah.
and they did a lot of.
They were kind of forefront for a long time. It's hard. I mean, I like to do the research for fun. I don't have to notate everything I'm researching as much as you do, potentially, but the problem is that there's a lot out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's from a scientific journal. Okay, cool, maybe.
If it's from a manufacturer,
But yeah, if it's from a manufacturer, if it's from a, you know, LEDs-are-killing-us-all.com, it might have some bias. I don't know. There's just a lot of hearsay, a lot of, well, where are they getting this information from? Where are they getting that? So it's a little bit of a, again, for me, it's what the LRC was doing, and it's like
they were actually doing the research,
actually funding
scientists
and doing
yeah,
lighting research. So, but there's not a lot of it is lab driven, and the connection between that and application is something the lighting community is constantly talking about. Of like, how do we bring these two together? Because it's really difficult. So I wish we had a better answer.
But yeah, look at scientific journals as opposed to just random web pages.
What's your favorite brand?
Brand?
For what?
Maxim, Brav, what are your?
Oh, like this, it's the same thing. I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
Tell me exact situation,
Yeah, right.
and then I'll say.
What's the cool little bulb you were flashed on and off that was different?
That's an old.
Oh, that one, That was actually by Philips. I don't know if they're making, I will say the lighting industry in the last 10 years has gone through dramatic changes with the LED revolution. Companies that were huge, that were big players, are now almost non-existent. So yeah, I don't think Philips is making them.
Really hard. When you spoke about the recessed lighting and actually why it's recessed, it reminded me how much harder it was for me just to find a recessed light that had a 1-inch valence. Because all the recessed lights, the lights are like just the cheap ones, right? Like I'm not talking about expensive ones, like just trying to put some of that, like trying to get good quality light because the recessed lights, you don't get that glare. The 1-inch valence, I know Cree had one long time ago and I couldn't find it now. Like, why is it so hard for them to make like a 2-inch recess?
More product, again, because whoever's making them isn't thinking about that.
They're not thinking.
And it's more extra plastic. I don't know why. It's very frustrating for us as well.
It's very frustrating, and it's frustrating.
I just got done doing a bathroom
I
remodel.
just want to give a quick time check. So we're just about 8:24 and, we do want to go
Okay,
hang
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
But we may have one more burning question. We can of course also take the conversation with jellyfish and talk lighting there.
How about red night lights? Why are they not become popular as opposed to white night lights? Because people who have sleep sensitivities or sensitivity to bright lights, it could work a lot better. And
Yeah,
Amazon-
well, amber is what we're seeing.
amber is better.
Yeah. In at least in sort of senior applications where you have facilities where you might have light underneath the bed, so that they so you're not getting the light in your eyes, but it's lighting the floor. But it would be an amber light, which would be heavy and
Better visual
red.
acuity with amber.
Well, you better keep visual acuity with amber. So then the street lights being amber would have been fine.
Well, no, it's a different task out there. The streetlights are there to give you better visual acuity. But when you're in your bedroom, you're trying to get to the bathroom, you don't want to.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Being here for 3 years.
5 years.
5?
Yeah.
Yes, that's everybody's job. Well, John, our founder. Well,